Hi, my name's Nick, and today I will be presenting about a nuclear apocalypse. My presentation is called A War to End All Wars. Most people don't know this. Most people don't know the actual number of nuclear warheads that exist on Earth. I feel that if people knew, this would be a greater concern for the population. Recent estimates show that there are close to 15,000 nuclear weapons distributed throughout the world, with Russia and the United States owning the largest amount. The problem with nuclear weapons is that they are in the hands of both countries that use them as a deterrent and countries that use them as a threat. Most weapons are owned by countries that have laid out policies stating that they are only for use in worst case scenarios. Russia is one of these countries that in the past has used them as a threat, and also because the United States had been rivals with them for almost a century is a great cause for concern. Also, Russia currently is in the possession of the largest nuclear arsenal on the entire planet, with a total weapon count of around 7,000 warheads. The sheer number of these warheads is a problem, but the size of the weapons that the Russians possess is alarming. They have in their possession the largest nuclear warhead called the Tsar Bomba. It is 100 metric tons, which is twice the size of the United States' largest warhead. Another highly problematic country is Pakistan. This country only possesses about 120 to 130 nuclear weapons, but they do still pose an extreme risk of nuclear war. There are some serious reasons for this threat. Firstly, Pakistan certainly possesses a growing number of nuclear weapons and continues to research and develop warheads. Secondly, because Pakistan is not part of the Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, or the NPT, and the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, the CTBT, Pakistan and its neighbors, India, have had many conflicts over the years, ranging from territory, water, and trade conflicts, as well as religious disagreements. These religious disagreements are even more alarming when you consider that Pakistan is a hotbed for Muslim extremists. Out of all the problematic countries in the world with nuclear weapons, North Korea is the most problematic of them all. North Korea has a very small arsenal of nuclear weapons, and the weapons that they do possess are smaller than the ones the United States dropped on Japan in 1945. Even with these relatively small warheads, they still create a cause for concern because their willingness to start a nuclear war. The main issue with North Korea is their unwillingness to sign treaties that halt their progress of developing and testing nuclear weapons. One of the main reasons for the threat of nuclear war is the possible nuclear apocalypse is the advancing technologies of warheads and their delivery systems. The advancement of nuclear technology and the number of nuclear warheads has exponentially increased since its first use on Japan in 1945. In the late 1980s, and at the peak of Russian stockpiles, they had around 40,000 nuclear weapons compared to the United States with around 32,000. Both these rival countries had created warheads that were 500 times the size of the little boy that was dropped on Hiroshima. The incredible power of these weapons could devastate the entire Earth. This slide illustrates the destructive capabilities of the little boy atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima on the left in 1945 compared to the results of the Tsar Bomba, the largest nuclear weapon ever created, on the right. We live in the world of increasing concern for a possible nuclear apocalypse due to the number of weapons distributed throughout the world and the incredible power of these weapons. Experts have conducted nuclear war scenarios since the first weapon was detonated in the late 1930s. Hypothetically, if Russia and the United States went to war, more than 2,600 nuclear missiles would be launched at targets in the United States, Russia, and Europe. Some fraction of the remaining missiles would be deployed in what is called a retaliation attacks. Hundreds of major cities in the United States, Europe, and Russia and their surrounding suburbs would be destroyed, with 70% of the sunlight would be blocked by smoke, causing rapid cooling of the earth. As a result, crop production would cease due to the lack of sunlight and massive destruction to the ozone layer. A nuclear war such as this scenario would have devastating effects on the world in which we live in. A nuclear war would have long-lasting effects on the environment and would cause deadly climate change. The blast from the nuclear warhead would cause immense nuclear firestorms in burning cities, which would create millions of tons of thick, black, radioactive smoke. Ozone losses would be 25 to 45 above mid-latitudes and 50 to 75% above northern high latitudes. The smoke would form a stratospheric smoke layer that would block sunlight from reaching the Earth's surface for a period about 10 years. Heated smoke in the stratosphere would cause immense destruction to the protective ozone layer. Because of this thick black smoke, ice age weather conditions would descend upon all nations. Additionally, harmful UV light would shorten or eliminate the growing season for a decade or even longer. Nuclear famine would result for the 80 million people who are already suffering from hunger and malnutrition. Along with devastating climate change, social implications would be just as problematic to the remaining human population, since millions of people would evacuate their homes. Regionally hoarding would be likely, and social disorganization would be widespread and far-reaching. The distribution system would be affected for months, if not years. With the lack of social structure, the lack of outside aid would create a sense of individual isolation. Legal norms and practices would be suspended for a prolonged period of time in many areas, and as a result, bartering would be widespread reaction to this inflation. Human beings would suffer due to the lack of social structure and services. Economic consequences would be far-reaching and worldwide. A major evacuation would leave the regional economy in shambles. Due to the lack of access to raw materials and goods, bottlenecking would occur. This happens when there is a point of congestion in the production system. Bottlenecking would cause a serious disruption in the world economies, since industries would be affected by a nuclear apocalypse. In addition, the banking industries would be severely affected, since it would be unable to lend money, and access to the banking systems would be diminished. The public would demand large sums of money from the government, which would create a large burden on the social services, which most of the world's governments would not be able to keep up with. One of the major issues with the nuclear apocalypse is the serious devastation of human life. A major global nuclear war could kill up to 400 to 500 million, and 8 to 25% of the world's population would be injured also. With that, a large percentage of the population could end up getting cancers and genetic defects due to the widespread global fallout. Hospitals would be overrun with injured people, and therefore you would not receive the help that you needed. An interesting fact is that Australia would be one of the last safe havens from the health risk of the nuclear apocalypse because of its location. If you want to stay safe and uninjured from a nuclear apocalypse, I would suggest moving to Australia. Most people are unaware that when a nuclear warhead is detonated, it also emits an EMP. This electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, is generated as a result from a nuclear airburst, which can be highly damaging to microcircuitry. These EMPs would cause a rapid rise in voltage that would damage microprocessors similar to lightning strikes. Telecommunication networks, information processing equipment, and medical technologies would be vulnerable and could be harmed by these EMP blasts. Without access to internet and banking systems, and many important industries would fail. The resulting EMP blast could blanket hundreds of thousands of square miles, causing widespread outages of computer systems. In conclusion, as you can see from the previous slides, a nuclear apocalypse would be devastating to the world's population, causing a severe social, health, and economic issues, deadly climate change, and loss of life. Living through a nuclear apocalypse would be extremely challenging and not something that any of us would want to experience. Thank you.